Hi, I'm Ksenia, and thank you so much for joining me for this week's Astro Weather Report. It is lovely to be with you. I want to send a big congratulations to Sabina for the winner, actually, of my competition that I was running 2 weeks ago. Your package has been sent, my darling, and once more, congratulations to you. I hope you enjoy your self-care package with all its extra goodies that I've added in for you. Also, thank you and welcome to all the new watchers here. It is lovely to have you with us. I hope you learn a lot about astrology through what I have to share, and I hope you get a lot of support too from this community. If you want to leave a comment in the comment section, there are plenty of very wise astrologers who follow along with my weekly Astro Weather Reports who can give you a lot of information if you have questions. So do feel free to comment in the comment section. Can I also just encourage everyone to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that stuff, because it really does help my work here to flourish, which of course I want. So hopefully you would like to see that too. And if so, like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. And finally, in my little bit of intro spiel, thank you to all my beautiful gold, silver and bronze star patrons. Your full moon report, an hour-long report, is now available for you if you haven't checked it out already. You have a full moon report for an hour, and it covers every sign. It covers the influence of the wealth star Scat upon this current full moon and the influence of the occult star Zosma upon this full moon. There's plenty of information there for you to enjoy. To my beautiful patrons, thank you once again for being your wonderful selves. And now on to this week's Astro Weather. Well, we are in for a doozy of a ride this September, and it's all beginning now this week. Welcome to the mirror of March, essentially. In March, let me explain, sort of from the 17th, actually, of February, to be honest, to the 31st of March, Mars, which is currently here in Aries, was down here in the sign of Capricorn with these three, Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. And Mars was with them. So we had this big conglomerate all together in the sign of Capricorn affecting life on Earth. And we know what happened in March. We had the outbreak, if you would like, of this pandemic. Believe it to be an actual thing or not. There's a lot of people who have sort of differing views on that, but it changed the face of the Earth, the face of life on the planet in March. And that was when these four got together. And now what's happening? We are having a connection of these four planets again. The trio of Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn, which are all very, very close together in the latter degrees of Capricorn, is making a square now, or Mars is making a square to those three. Mars is coming from its own sign, Aries. Now, Mars was very strong in Capricorn. Mars is, quite healthy in the sign of Capricorn, but it's extra, extra strong in the sign of Aries. And if you caught my Astro Weather Report last week, I talked a lot about what Mars in Aries is all about and what will happen with Mars retrograde motion. Mars is turning retrograde this week, so please check out that video. You'll get all the lowdown and information on what to expect for the whole month of September through my Astro Weather Report from last week. But we're just looking this week at the current weather for the week ahead. So what is the difference between a square aspect, which is a 90-degree aspect, and a conjunction when Mars was here? What is the tonal difference? Well, a conjunction makes things express very prominently, very visibly, very easily seen. And we saw that happen. We saw the pandemic and the global reaction to that and the economic reaction to that. That was very predominant. Everybody was talking about it, and we still are, but it was unavoidable. It was predominant. And that is the one thing that we see in a natal chart. When you have a conjunction, the planets making a conjunction become the predominant force. They combine energies, 2 energies, or 3 energies, or in this case it was 4 energies, a stellium, together, giving a forceful impact that's noticeable because there's so much energy directed into that one spot in the chart. And so that's what we experienced, a predominance of these energies. Pluto, power and control. Jupiter, the desire for greater good was there, but the expansion of everything that it was touching. the dominance and control by Pluto, the authoritarianism by Saturn, and Mars, sort of accidents, rashes, heat, even a sense Mars also brought anger, frustration, irritation at the combination particularly of Mars and Saturn conjunction, because Mars and Saturn conjunct is a very difficult aspect to carry, where Saturn's trying to squash the exuberance of Mars, the expression of Mars, and Mars fights against that and rallies against that and pushes against that, and it's very fractious, and we saw that happening obviously in March. And Jupiter being there as well, exacerbating all of these energies, and that's what happened in March. There were also some indicators as well after the new moon in Pisces that brought about pandemic energy, and I talked about that way back in my videos back in February, March, and so if you want to check those out, there was a bit of information there about where that all came from energetically in the skies. But now we're looking at a square. How does a square aspect express? How is this going to be different over the coming month as Mars reaches 28 degrees of Aries and then retrogrades back, sort of making square exact aspects to these three planets, bang, 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 and then turns direct again and goes bang, 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 bang. And we have a number of hits to these planets through a square aspect from Mars. Well, a square aspect expresses with the energy that is connected to Saturn. It does so through obstacles that need to be pushed through, that need to be overcome, that need to be endured. And this is going to be the energy of September. Obstacles, frustrations that we are going to need to push through and overcome and endure. Now, Mars and Saturn are not friends in traditional astrology, and so this is going to be where the challenge lies. The Mars energy wants to push through and overcome the obstacles and blockages and restrictions that Saturn is putting in place. So up until now, certainly here in Australia, we've been a nanny state for years and years in Australia. You know, we just tote the line with whatever the government does and nobody seems to lift a finger against it. It's been quite disturbing in all honesty, but I'm not going to go down that road. Anyone who's come for a holiday to Australia has probably observed that that's the case here. But we have seen people towing the line for the last couple of months in Australia particularly, where, you know, the government says jump, the people say how high, and they just do as they're told. And September's going to be very different under this energy. The people are going to say, well, look, I've had a gutful. I've had enough. When is this going to end? When are your totalitarian, dictatorial regime measures going to actually conclude? And people will start to take action, because Mars is to take action. Now, I want to encourage everybody, and I spoke about this in my last video, do not initiate fights. Do not initiate warring under this energy, because you will lose. When Mars is retrograde, whatever we initiate that is of a Mars nature does not work in our favor. If we start a conflict, if we take someone to court, if we pursue somebody for some sort of competitive reason, it's going to backfire on us and we will fail. Let the authorities pursue war, pursue conflict, pursue difficulties, and I would encourage the rest of us to pursue peaceful protest, peaceful demonstrations with the masses. Use our Mars energy, use our initiatory energy to be democratic. Remember I said last week, Mars and Jupiter are all about democracy, and this connection might make democracy very difficult, but we need to pursue it, because if we aggressively pick a fight, if you like, with the authorities that be, we're going to actually come off second best. The people will come off second best, unfortunately, and we don't want that to happen. So as much as it might be very difficult to do so, keep the peace now, and follow the lead of the civil rights movement in America with Martin Luther King. Peaceful protest against what is going on. We'll accomplish so much more under this energy. We have to push through. We have to endure if we're to overcome. And we want to do it in the manner that's going to be supported astrologically. And that means making peaceful protest, but still taking action, because Mars calls us to take action. We're going to want to fight. We're going to want to sort of give them the bird, but we have to do it in a manner that can actually accomplish the ends we seek. And under this astral sky, it needs to be done in a democratic way as much as we can. Now, I'm not saying for 1 second, not for 1 millisecond, that we should sit back and let the governments get away with doing whatever they want to do. No matter what country that you're in, we are called to be representatives of the people, and Mars asks us to assert the energy of the individual, and we're called to do that. But we need to be very conscious about how we're doing that and in what way we're doing that under this energy, if we're to see a shift, if we're to see the change that we all deeply long for in societies, if we want to get rid of the pedophilic governments, if we want to get rid of the influence of media control and media censorship that is just abundant at the moment. We have to watch how we act if we want to see an outcome. But enough on that. In a natal chart, a square aspect represents something that will actually get better with age, as is the nature of Saturn. Saturn can make things really hard in the beginning, but as things unfold, as time goes on in a life of someone with a square aspect in their chart, it can bring a lot of blessing. In fact, in Vedic astrology, it's considered that it can be highly manifesting. You learn to endure, you learn to push through, you learn to persevere, and in doing so, with the energy of a square, you can actually accomplish much and achieve much in life because of the square energy. And the same now applies to this particular square that's going to be playing out for the next month of September. It's going to get better. It's going to give better results as the year goes on. Now, September will be hard because this is the first stages when we're frustrated at things, when we're annoyed at what's going on and we want to fight back and we want to retaliate. It's going to hit hard, but my hope is that, as is the nature of a square aspect, by the end of the year, it will have brought positive results that are more beneficial, just like it does in a natal chart. Obviously, over the course of someone's lifetime, we're looking at sort of a few months here, but the results can be, eventually very positive, and that's my hope for the collective. How do we handle anything that has the nature of Saturn? How do we handle Saturn in our natal chart? How do we handle a square which has the nature of Saturn in the current transiting sky that is being experienced by the collective? Well, basically, we practice everything that I've just spoken about. Endurance, perseverance, patience, and stickability when Mars is involved as well. The ability to just keep going. Mars is energy and putting energy and action into something, and Saturn is energy and action when it's connected with Mars for the long term. The willpower that is needed to overcome, the drive, the determination, the tenacity, the stoicism needed to grit your teeth, sink your feet into the ground and not budge an inch. That's what we can practice now to overcome during this month ahead. So if you want to know a little bit more about the energy of Mars and Mars retrograde that we're stepping into, check out the link. I'll pop a little thingy up here that you can hook to, and you can see my video which went into great depth about how that will play out and how to handle that energy with the greatest wisdom for the next couple of months. A lot of people left comments on that video saying, "Oh, you're so negative." Well, I'm sorry. These are times that are very fractious and difficult, and if you haven't noticed that that's the case on planet Earth, then I don't know what rock you're living under. We have to know how to handle these energies with wisdom, and that's the whole point of astrology. There's many good things, there's many joys, there's many wonderful things, and there's always a way out. There is always a solution. I'll point out that Neptune, spirituality, is one of the solutions that's playing out for the world at the moment, and we're seeing so many people waking up, coming alive, realizing that there is more than meets the eye to life on planet Earth. But we have to know how to handle astrological energies to make the most of them, good, bad, or otherwise. So to all the people who said I'm negative, well, you don't have to watch. You can go live your life however you want to live. But this is the energy that all astrologers are going to be focused on talking about for the next month. So we need to sort of be prepared. This is what's going on, and this is how we can utilize it best. Now, what is unfolding in the week ahead is there's going to end up being, it's not quite playing out just yet, but before September's over, we're going to be having a T-square, which will be, the sun will move to about, into Libra. There's the sun in Virgo right now, but it'll move into Libra, and then that, whoopsie, sorry for my poor drawing skills, that will then move into becoming a T-square, which is basically that. A triangular shape with two 90-degree angles, squares, and an opposition. So Sun and Mars and these three. And I'm just looking at my chart and thinking, where is Mercury? I haven't put Mercury on there. The wonders of modern editing. And here is Mercury. But there is going to be a T-square, as I've just described. And a T-square is actually, it's a very challenging energy, as the hard aspects would denote. However, it can be highly manifesting. And again, in the Vedic systems, this is considered to be a shape that will bring great potential into the life of an individual if they have it in their chart once they learn to push through the obstacles. And again, the same for the collective now. We're going into this time when the sun, it will move in a few days' time, when the sun will move into Libra and will eventually create this square here before September is out, where we're going to be experiencing tension that can actually, in the long term, result in manifestation of change that's sorely needed on the planet. What is this going to bring? Well, according to the signs, if we just look at the signs that are being activated here, we've got Aries, god of war. Aries is about independent assertion of our willpower by individuals. Aries energy. We've got Libra, all about open enemies, all about justice, finding harmony, finding balance. And of course, we've got Capricorn, the old structures, the old hierarchies, the old traditions. So these things are going to be interplaying for the month of September and a little into October. And there's going, probably for all of October actually, and there's going to be this friction between the old order of things, the old hierarchies, the desires of the independent people, and the need for harmony and balance. And the need to, we're going to have sort of open enemies between these two. And so, this is going to be at the forefront. This is what's on the table. All astrologers are talking about this at the moment, and we're very foolish if we stick our head in the sand and say that, this is not going to affect life on planet Earth, and it is. But I come back to something that I have been sharing for quite some time on my Facebook page, on my Instagram page. This is a birthing process. These are the labor pains, and this is describing the labor pains. This is describing what, every woman goes through in giving birth to a new life, a new baby. And we have to go through this to come out the other side into the blessings and the potential of the new age. And we're not just talking about age of Aquarius here. We're talking about a whole new paradigm. And this was seen when we have, it's being heralded actually by the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in a brand new modality. And that's happening in December. But we've got to go through the labor pains first before that birth occurs, that birthing arrives. So just like any woman going through birthing pains, we grit our teeth, we bear down, we get very focused on getting through this because we know there is a goal at the end. There's light at the end of the tunnel. There is a baby that we're going to hold in our arms that we are going to love and care for as we nurture a whole new way of being, a whole new enlightened state on planet Earth. That's what's coming. And as you're dealing with the labor pains that are going to play out through this, keep in mind, we're birthing a new baby. We're birthing a new baby. Know that there's something coming at the end of all this. It is not in vain. It is not for nothing, but we need to push through. But enough with the themes of the week ahead. What is specifically happening for you this week? Well, there's two major energies that are at play. And the first one is the fact that on September the 9th, Mars up here in Aries is going to go retrograde and is going to start the ball rolling with everything I talked about in last week's video and everything I've just talked about. Now things begin. We've already been feeling it. Anyone who's really sensitive, I have a lot of friends who are empaths. Myself, I'm a highly sensitive energy, and I've been feeling it. There's this tenseness, there's this anxiousness, there's this uneasiness that is just there in our bodies, in our feelings at the moment. We know, we can sense it's coming, those of us who are highly sensitive. But again, it begins Mars retrograde on the 9th. Check out last week's video if you want to know more about that one. Mars retrogrades every 2 years, roughly. And so it's a calling card, this particular Mars energy. Mars always retrogrades when he's opposite the Sun. And this is a time when we analyze, okay, the last 2 years since Mars last went retrograde, what have we done? How have we lived? How have we asserted ourselves? How have we shown our independence? How have we stood on our own 2 feet? How have we been creative and instigated new things? We review it under this Mars energy. What have we been focused on for the last 1 to 2 years since Mars last retrograded? And now what is the fruition of that as we begin a whole new cycle of Mars? So it's a time I would encourage you on the positive side of Mars retrograde. Assess. What have you accomplished in the last 2 years? What have you achieved? What have you done? What's manifested in your life that is different to the previous years before? What's new? And look at how well you've done with that. Well, for me, my business has been my focus, and that's where the push has been for me for the last 2 years in a way that was never the case beforehand. And I feel very blessed by that, and I've grown through that, and I've certainly, I feel, blossomed into a whole new state of being through being with you on YouTube every week, and through doing my readings and doing, establishing my business. So in that sense, that's what I'm reflecting on with Mars retrograde. What about you? So that's September the 9th. And then on September the 12th, we have quite an interesting little happening. And this is down here with Jupiter. Jupiter, I'm going to put a big D next to Jupiter. What does that mean? Jupiter is going direct. Jupiter, from our vantage point here on Earth, has looked like it's been going backwards in the sky since May the 17th, I think. 14th, May the 14th. Jupiter has been retrograding since then, looking like it's going backward in the sky. It isn't really, it's still moving forward in actuality, but from our vantage point on Earth, which is how astrology is constructed, it looks like he's going backwards. And so the energy of Jupiter has been more internalized because of this. Now, Jupiter retrograde is actually one of the more positive retrograde seasons. It is associated in a natal chart with alchemy and being able to turn lead into gold, turn problems into opportunities, to see the gold, to see the benefit at the core of all the difficulties, like to see the gold in all the dross, if you know what I mean. So that is the alchemy of a Jupiter retrograde in the natal chart, and certainly a lot of us have been looking for that for the last couple of months. Where is the gold in all this? Where is the pill? Not the pill in the jam. Where is this beautiful needle in the haystack of what we're going through right now? And so again, I want to ask you a personal question. What have you transformed from lead into gold throughout the last few months since May the 14th, when Jupiter went retrograde? What has transformed in your life into something of value, something of beauty that in the beginning seemed like something really awful, something difficult, something challenging? Where have you, alchemized something in your life? When we're in Jupiter retrograde season, or if we have it natally in our chart, it makes external things not unimportant, not valuable, but it makes them sort of secondary. We want spiritual depth, we want purpose, we want meaning when we're in Jupiter retrograde. We want to know that what we are contributing to the world has value. We want to know that what we're building it has meaning and purpose and strong intent. It's not just, get wealth for the sake of wealth. Jupiter is the god of wealth. But under Jupiter retrograde, we want wealth that has substance, wealth that has meaning. We want to create an external world that's built on a foundation of purpose and meaning. And during Jupiter retrograde, that's what we're really looking for. So it's not that external things don't matter. They do, of course, but we want the truth at the core when we're in Jupiter retrograde season. And if that's what we have in our natal chart, that's what we want too. We want more substance. We want more depth. Now, with Jupiter turning direct on the 12th of September, we're going to be finding our attention is now more focused on, what's happening in material reality? And of course, look at the timing with all of this. Now, instead of looking at, what is the deep truth? And, we've been hunting for truths. We've been looking and for truth and meaning and substance in all the craziness of 2020. Now, when Jupiter goes direct, what's going to happen? We're going to be focused on, what is happening out there in reality? No more looking for the truth. Right now, we're going to actually enact the physical reality of what is truth. We might not like the idea, and I'm not going to say I'm one way or another. I'm pro-choice is what I will say about this, but we might no longer be discussing whether or not I'm going to have a COVID vaccine injection. We might now be taking more externalized action and focus on, what's going on out there. Instead of thinking about it, processing it, looking for truth, now it's, okay, action time. And we might be attending a protest about that happening somewhere with this going on. The time for digging for the truth and looking for the internal substance and meaning is over when Jupiter goes direct. Now it's about this is just backing Mars up and taking action now. Now the focus is on the external reality of what is experienced. Our attention goes back to the physical realm now when Jupiter goes direct. Our collective attunement becomes externalized. So that's what's happening when Jupiter goes direct. And of course, ordinarily, Jupiter retrograding period is beneficial and we can get a lot out of it. It's one of the few retrograde seasons that's actually thumbs up, all good. But when Jupiter goes direct, it doesn't mean Jupiter direct is bad. It's fine. It's just a different approach. And our focus now becomes more externalized, as I said. What's happening in your external world that's now drawing your attention? What's happening in your physical reality that's now going to require your action and your attention rather than sort of sitting and pondering and reflecting? Certainly for me, I'll let you in on what's going on in my life. Mars has been activating my moon, which is home. And I've had so many problems with my internet. I've had so many problems with a leak from a recently renovated bathroom and problems with the laundry cupboards that had white ants that need to be, which is termites that need to be repaired. It's just one thing after another after another. Thank you, Mars connection with all of this and my moon. And that's where my attention quite obviously is going now and for the duration, I think, of Jupiter turning direct. My attention is no longer on the philosophical or the dreaming or the idealism of, my house could look like this or I could make my home like that. Now it's on, let's take action. I've got to fix this laundry cupboard. I've got to fix this leak. I've got to fix this internet issue. And so that's where my attention has been. What about you? What's going on in your external reality that's shifted from an internal thinking about this, what would my renovated new bathroom look like, to, okay, now I've got to do something. Now I've got to take action. What has changed in your world in that regard? What is happening in your external world that is now drawing your attention and the need for action? Now, Jupiter is going direct at 17 degrees of the sign of Capricorn on the 12th of September. And this is conjunct a fixed star named Rukbat. And Rukbat is a fixed star that has the qualities of Saturn and Jupiter. So it's because of that, when we have a fixed star that has the qualities of Jupiter and Saturn combined, it's a wealth star. It's a prosperity star. So hopefully this is promising, and hopefully for anyone who is ruled by Jupiter, someone who's got say Sagittarius or Pisces as their rising sign, or they've got Jupiter very strong and predominant governing a lot of their chart, maybe in an angular house or in good dignity in Cancer or something like that. Anybody who has Jupiter strong, or anybody who has any planets at 17 degrees of Capricorn, where Jupiter is turning direct, you can get an activation of this forward momentum now, this moving ahead, this push for the future. Jupiter actually rules the hips and because of that is associated with moving forward in life. And now when Jupiter goes direct, okay, now we're moving forward in life. So if you've got a planet a prominent planet at 17 degrees Capricorn, or if you're ruled by Jupiter, this conjunction with Rukbat, the wealth star, might see you start to move forward now with things to do with prosperity and wealth, and having material solidness in your life, as Jupiter now focuses externally on the external reality of your world, moving direct, conjunct a wealth star. So check that out, see if that's the case in your chart, and if that's going to therefore affect you. There could be a very alchemical lead into gold transformation time or redirectioning of wealth and prosperity that occurs for some people with this Jupiter direct motion. Not for everybody, but for people who are being affected very personally by this. One thing that we need to remember with Jupiter going direct, though, is that Jupiter is now heading back towards Saturn. I haven't got it lined up very well here, but you've got, not Saturn, Pluto, around 22, 23 degrees of Capricorn. Jupiter is at 17 degrees. Now Jupiter turns direct and starts heading back towards his final conjunction with Pluto. This has been a lot of the cause for material upheaval this year. Every 12 years or so, Jupiter and Pluto get together in the sky and we have a material reset. I don't want to go into too much talk about Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. I have talked about that before, but Jupiter is the god of great wealth. Jupiter is the god of wealth. Pluto is the god of great wealth, god of the underworld, where we find the gold at the center of all the problems and the difficulties and the upheavals and the traumas. There's gold down there to be discovered in the underworld. Pluto rules the underworld, and Pluto is the ancient god of great wealth. So when we have this once every 12-year conjunction of Pluto and Jupiter, we see a market reset, a reset of wealth and the reset of the wealth distribution on the planet that often happens. And we get sort of some volatility in the stock markets, and they plan for this. You know, people on Wall Street, people at the stock exchange, they are working with this knowledge in mind that there is a 12-year cycle that they run with. And then, 2008, we have the housing crisis in America. Or 12 years later, 2020, we've got the pandemic and all that did to the markets. It's a resetting. And there are 3 hits in every Pluto conjunct Jupiter year. Most Pluto conjunct Jupiter years, not always, but most of the time. We've had 2 hits already. We had the first hit that occurred in March. Then we had the second hit in June. Hello, resurgence of the pandemic issue and market, economy issues here in Australia. The third hit is coming in November. And Jupiter going direct is saying, okay, let's get ready. The final whammy is coming before we have another 12-year reprieve until next time. But it's been particularly difficult this year because Saturn's been involved as well, and we've got all this stuff from Mars playing into. So this is why it's been such a massive year. Jupiter going direct is the last warning bell that says, have you got your karmic house in order? Have you dealt with your muck? What secrets are in your cupboard? Pluto is all about the skeletons in the closet. What secrets are you hiding? What are you pushing down? And if you're in politics or some sort of high business level thing and you're a pedophile, and we know all about that stuff that's been coming to the surface at the moment through this time, well, your secrets are not going to remain hidden for much longer. And you need to, no matter who you are, politician or otherwise, and it's not just pedophilia, it's anything. I'm just using that as a very obvious illustration of what's been brought to the surface this year in a very powerful way, and it needed to happen. But what secrets are you hiding in your life? You know, are you keeping money stashed in a shoebox so that your spouse doesn't find out that you've got it? Not that that's a bad thing. Some people need to do that to survive, you know. But, you know, what hidden things are you keeping? You know, maybe you're having an affair on the side, or maybe, you know, you've been stealing money from work, or, you know, anything. What are you doing that is perhaps not above board? Well, Pluto, Jupiter is going to sort of say, that's going to be revealed. Your hidden secrets, your things in the skeletons in the closet, they're being exposed now. And we've got till November to sort our karmic shit out. Jupiter going direct, waving that flag, saying, come on guys, last round, get it together. We've got to ask ourselves, have we been behaving with integrity, with compassion, with kindness, particularly throughout this year? Have we sought, you know, revenge on other people? Have we sought to undermine other people? Are we clawing our way over the top of other people just to get to the top of the tree and be the mountain goat, Capricorn, at the top of the mountain above everybody else at great expense to everyone? It's time for looking deep, being honest with ourselves, and bringing that out, letting it go, resolving it now before the final hit. I would also mention too, for some people, it depends where Capricorn is falling in your chart, mostly for sort of Aquarius people actually. If there's any past life karmic muck that is playing out in a karmic loop for you in this lifetime, you've got to deal with that now. You've got to deal, lest the rug be pulled out from under you at the final conjunction in November. It might mean going and seeing maybe one of my practitioners or someone else who practices shamanism or past life regression work, doing some therapy, reading some self-help books, but getting rid of whatever karmic loops that are playing in your life. It's a very powerful time to be unraveling those, releasing those, letting those go, dissolving those, purging those, as is the nature of Pluto, in readiness for this final hit that's coming. Now, for those of us who can say, I've done the best that I could given the circumstances. You know, it's been really tough. Maybe I lost my job, had no money to pay the bills. I was desperate and it's been really hard, but I've always tried to act with integrity. I've done the best that I can given the circumstances. Then you may reap the karmic rewards. Not the difficult fruit, not the rotten fruit on the tree, but the actual blossoming of karmic reward time. In shamanic astrology, the final hit of a Pluto transit can often bring exactly what you've always been wanting, exactly what you've always been looking for, provided that you've purged your soul of all the cobwebs in the basement, of all the you know, the muck and the shit deep in our pipes, you know. If we've got rid of that, then we can actually receive what we've always wanted, what we've always been looking for. Maybe, you know, you lost your job in the beginning of all this, the first hit of Jupiter Pluto. Maybe you lost your job, and then by the November, you know, you've dealt with your karma, you've dealt with your stuff, you've acted with as much integrity throughout this upheaval, through this trauma as you can. And lo and behold, you get offered a job at the end of this year that's far better than any job you've had before, with a better salary, more respect, and a reward for your integrity. Pluto can, you know, bring about those sorts of karmic fruits that are a gift as much as a curse. So it's up to us. How pure are our motives? How integrous are our actions? It's a time for doing some deep evaluation, especially as Jupiter goes direct. I will talk more about the Pluto-Jupiter conjunction in greater depth in future videos getting up to November. So if you haven't done so already, subscribe and don't miss a video, because you'll want to know all about that when the time comes. But for now, let's do our run around of all the signs, and we're going to look at how Jupiter turning direct is affecting each one of us all in the week ahead, particularly starting from the 12th. So let's begin. Who will be the lucky first? I'm going to start with Gemini, because I don't think I've started with Gemini before. So they're going first today. So Gemini we're looking here now at the effects of Jupiter going direct. And of course, this is falling for Gemini people in their 8th house. Now, this has been a tough year for a lot of Gemini people. The intensity in the 8th house is just really, really strong. There's been a call for Gemini people to really focus hard on getting maybe their taxes in order or their business structure in order. Anything to do with other people's money has been a big focus for the last, ever since Saturn moved into the 8th house of other people's money. So that's been very predominant for you guys and really exacerbated this year. So when Jupiter was going retrograde, you might have had some delays in legal matters. You might have had, insurance settlements, difficulties with tax returns, lodging tax documents, perhaps problems with receiving an inheritance, or, you were promised an inheritance and you had to go to court and fight somebody who was contesting the will or something like that. Jupiter retrograde season can indicate problems in that realm. And so these things might have been at the forefront during Jupiter retrograde, but Jupiter going direct can mean that there's a change in that now. Maybe the finalization of that will occur for you. Maybe some sort of insurance settlement or insurance payout will come your way. Now, you've probably had a very strong interest in metaphysical subjects over the last few months, since May the 14th as well. And so that may wane a little now that Jupiter's going direct. Remember, Jupiter retrograde is all about internalization and looking for truth deep within. And of course, the 8th house is very much a big house of looking for deep truths. So it might shift a little bit now. You might have been really passionate about astrology or psychology or mysticism or shamanism or something, and then Jupiter goes direct and you're like, I just haven't got time for that. Too busy, got things to do. Life's taken on a more external focus now. That could also be the case when Jupiter goes direct. And while Jupiter was retrograde, you might have had the ability to do some serious transformation, because the 8th house is all about transformation, but it might have been transformation of a partner's finances. You might have been fixing up your husband's spending limit or something like that, or you might have been sort of trying to help your wife curb her shoe fetish and, help her sort out her finances. So there may have been that kind of effect playing out too. Might have also been, as I said, quite an emphasis on sorting out your taxation priorities and business affairs, particularly with regard to partners' business affairs as well. That might have been part of it. And that might ease off now that the retrograde motion is complete. We might find that that's no longer necessary for us to focus on. So moving from Gemini, let's go to Cancer. Cancer rising people, well, this is putting the energy of Jupiter moving direct into your 7th house. This is where you've had a more internalized focus since May 14th, and now the shift is happening to focus you more externally. What does that actually mean when it's in the 7th house? If you're single and you've got this position, you may have been looking to find a partner who had a lot of substance. And of course, that's a good thing. Or you might have met partners, potential partners, business partners, clients, and potential marriage partners as well, that have some depth and some substance. There's sort of a lack of tolerance even for people who are just really superficial, who just want to talk about the weather. It's okay if they want to talk about the astro weather, of course, but you know what I'm saying. You've been looking for someone who can philosophically uplift you when you have strong Cancer, particularly Cancer rising energy, and Jupiter going retrograde in your 7th house. But now that Jupiter is turning direct, it mightn't be so important to you any longer. Your business partnerships, whether they share that same spiritual perspective as you, that might not matter so much any longer. And maybe it's now more about, well, are they good with their money? Can they do excellent marketing? Well, if that's the case, great. Let's focus on externals. So there can be a shift there. If you're single, maybe the focus is no longer on, well, I need to have somebody who has this same spiritual depth as me, although I think that's a really good thing to have, no matter who you are, or where Jupiter is retrograding or directing. But maybe for some people, it no longer has that significance any longer, and then it doesn't mean so much as it did over the last few months. One thing that we do see when Jupiter is retrograde, because it is so much about internalization analysis, digging for sort of truth and alchemizing things. We find that we're very good at revitalizing any relationship. So if you've been married, if you are married, over the last few months since May 14th, you might have found that you've breathed new life back into your relationship through Jupiter retrograde period. That suddenly the relationship has more substance, has more depth to it. You've been able to counsel through any relationship problems, and that can be business partnerships as well. During this Jupiter retrograde season, you might have been able to iron out any wrinkles in the relationship, because there's this great capacity to be a counselor, to look at internal truths about a relationship, and as I said, to breathe new life. If you are in a counseling type job and you're Cancer rising, you might have actually been able to help many people get back together and breathe new life into their marriages or their business partnerships. There is a beautiful energy of empowered negotiating and win-win situation creating with Jupiter going retrograde here in the 7th house. And this may have been the case for the last few months, but now with Jupiter going direct, it's going to be more, okay, now we've sorted out our relationship problems, let's focus on the externals of our life. We need to fix this broken garage door, or we need, we have to go and find more work because we've got to put food on the table, and what we've been doing hasn't been enough, and right, what are we going to do now as a couple? Maybe where we're living isn't really suitable, and okay, what changes do we need to make? We need to go live in a different sort of community now and find a utopian society somewhere. The focus now is more external. Okay, as a couple, what are we doing externally now, rather than let's focus inwardly on the couple energy. So you've alchemized that, and now it's time to go forward and make some changes in your external reality when Jupiter goes direct. So if you are Leo rising, you've had your, that was a bit quick, Jupiter going retrograde in your 6th house, if you're Leo rising. So this has been probably a time since May 14th when you may have felt very misunderstood by the people that you work with. You may have had a lot of depth to your soul and your purpose in being at work. You wanted meaning in your work. You wanted to sort of do projects or be involved with things that actually created the greater good in the world. And your co-workers are like, what the hell? Why are you getting so head up about that? Why is that even an issue for you? So big focus has probably been on substance in the workplace, and that may have left co-workers scratching their heads about, well, I don't understand. Why are you so concerned? You might have been able to, if you are Leo rising, create a lot of reforms and a lot of changes in the workplace. You might have, advocated for, better quality toilet paper in the toilets or something like that. Something menial, obviously, but it is a house of menial trivialities of daily life, isn't it? But anything, better biscuits in the tea room. You might have been advocating for some changes at work, and during Jupiter retrograde that may have been achievable for you. You might have been during Jupiter retrograde getting very serious and focused on your health and well-being and diet. Jupiter retrograde makes that you want substance in what you're doing. You don't want to just sort of, I just want to, go without chocolate to lose a bit of weight. You'll be like, no, how is the health of my body? How is my nervous system functioning? And how is what I'm eating affecting my nervous system? And you go deep into the health truths about diet, about exercise. And so there's probably been an alchemy of those things in your life, a transforming of lead into gold. For some people who are Leo rising, you may have actually even transformed how your health is. You might have started in May with huge overweight issues and problems with diet and problems with exercise, and lo and behold, you get to September 12th, Jupiter turns direct, and you have alchemized that lead feeling, maybe physically in your body, into empowerment. Now you've lost all this weight, you're out there jogging every day, your diet's fresh and clean and light, and you feel like a new person. Jupiter going direct can highlight that that's been the course that you have taken since May. Big alchemy of diet, of exercise, of workplace relations as well that might have occurred for anyone who is Leo rising. And of course, Jupiter going direct now means that maybe those things aren't quite the priority that they once were. You don't need to focus now on finding the truth of, how this particular food stuff affects your body, because you've sorted it all out. You've found the answers. You've found the truth. Now you just apply it and live focus now externally. Okay. And you might find now, Leo rising people, that you're getting along better with your co-workers, that your health and well-being is now transformed and you're much more active. You can focus more externally now on how you're living life, how you're experiencing your daily world. That's what we're seeing when we have Jupiter moving direct from a retrograde period in the 6th house. And for Virgo rising people, this energy is falling in their 5th house. Jupiter has been retrograding in your 5th house since May the 14th, if you're Virgo rising, and this might have seen some difficulties during this time with children, perhaps, you might have been really seeking truth and seeking sort of substance in a relationship with a child. Now, for some people, that's wonderful and it comes very, very easily. But if you've been estranged from a child, if you've had difficulties with a child and you've tried to restore the balance, you've tried to connect again, it might have been difficult and hard. But Jupiter retrograde is the energy of alchemy, and for Virgo people, you might have alchemized a relationship with your child, turned a difficult relationship with a child into something beautiful by the end of this retrograde season, which can obviously something we would all want, a blessed relationship with our children. The same actually applies for romantic relationships. This is a house of romance. It's actually the house of love. 7th house is the house of committed relationships. Yep, I'm committed to you. 5th house is the house of, oh, it's so beautiful, I'm so in love, and they're wonderful, and it's when we are in that heady space of romance and being in love. It's the endorphins, it's all that good stuff. And of course, Jupiter retrograding here may have caused you to go very internal with a love relationship, to really desire to connect at a deeper, more meaningful level with a lover, with a partner who is of a sort of dating nature. You've wanted more substance from your romantic relationships while Jupiter is retrograding. And of course, that can create a greater foundation for love. You might have also been able to sort of revive a love relationship while Jupiter has been retrograding and breathe new life into it, transform a love relationship that might have been on the rocks before. Jupiter retrograde can actually alchemize that and bring, what was something that was doomed into new blossoming, new life, new fruiting. Jupiter's also very compassionate, and when he's retrograding, you might have found that you had a very strong compassion for people and their education. How the poor people stuck in war zones, how are those poor children getting educated? This is the house of teenage education particularly. And so you might have had a real passion and compassion for that and taken a lot of action around, well, how can we help? How can we fix? How can we resolve? Especially as you're Virgo, which is all about fixing and resolving issues of injustice. So that could have been a big focus for you. But now that Jupiter's gone direct, what might we be seeing? Well, maybe there's no need any longer to focus on that breathing new life into that relationship with a child or into that relationship with a partner. Maybe things have got back to a stage where they're just great. And now you can focus on the external stuff, like just hanging out together, just having fun, which is the general nature of the 5th house. And when Jupiter is direct in the 5th house, let's have a good time. Let's party. Let's experience happiness here. Where is my joy? In the 5th house and with Jupiter. So you might be having more fun now with your partners, with your children. You might also, not that you'll neglect, say, children's education who are underprivileged or what have you, but you might now be more focused on other things. And it doesn't quite have the meaning or the weight or the passion that you may have had for it when Jupiter was retrograde. Doesn't mean that you're not going to do it anymore or you're going to neglect it, but it's not the main priority that it has been for the last couple of months when this change occurs. We can also find our creative output is different now too, that Jupiter goes direct, where perhaps instead of looking for substance in what we're producing, I need meaning, it has to be purposeful, it has to be useful. Maybe now when Jupiter goes direct, now it just has to be something that gives me joy. Now it just has to be pleasurable, and I have to find, a sense of happiness out of what I'm doing. And maybe that becomes the priority with your creative self-expression, be it performance, be it a hobby, be it some sort of enjoyable interest that you love. It's now going to not be all about where's the meaning and purpose in this. Now it's going to be about the fun and the joy and the pleasure. So Libra rising people. Okay. Not far away from Libra season, getting ready for that one. That's going to be very interesting this year. We are seeing the energy of Jupiter turning direct now in your 4th house. Jupiter has been retrograding in your 4th house since May the 14th. And so since that time, you might have noticed that there was a big focus on home and family relationships. You might have been putting a lot of effort into making your family connect, get along with each other. Great Auntie Mavis, she hasn't spoken to Great Auntie Jean for years. And you're like, I'm going to bring those two back together and they're going to be best mates again. And you put a lot of effort into that. And indeed, Jupiter can be, when he's retrograding, very alchemical and to transform the lead into gold. And maybe Auntie Mavis and Auntie Jean actually do get back together and have a friendship that's been on the rocks for, 40 years. Bonus. And it's all you're doing, that kind of scenario can happen. You can alchemize in Jupiter retrograde period some sort of family dynamic, family relationship that mightn't have been so good. Because Jupiter retrograde does have a bit of a connection, with revival and breathing new life, and as I've said, alchemizing things. You might have been very interested since May in renovating something, in restoring some old car or some old house or some old barn or something, and reviving maybe even some old traditions as well, because this is a house of tradition, especially in the sign of Capricorn. You might have been very interested in reviving some old traditions or some old ways of doing things. So during Jupiter retrograde, restoration with family, restoration of a home. Certainly, I've got a Libra moon, and that's certainly been the case for me during Jupiter retrograde, and certainly maybe some sort of breathing new life and alchemizing some real estate or land or property situation that you have. And now at the end of this phase, Jupiter turns direct. And where does the energy go? It goes external now. Okay, you've sorted that issue with Great Auntie Mavis and Auntie Jean, and they're good, they're golden. So now, okay, well, now I can get on with my life, and I'll go and, enjoy just being with my family and having a family reunion, and everybody's going to get along at this family reunion. Or maybe we can actually have Thanksgiving dinner this year and everybody will be there, and, we're not going to have people who are sort of, giving the rest of the family the bird because they're not interested, because we've resolved and we've healed. And we've alchemized something to do with family. It might also look like, now Jupiter goes direct and, okay, you've sorted out those issues in the house. You don't need to worry anymore. Fingers crossed for me, my internet issues will be resolved. My laundry cupboards will be repaired and rebuilt, and my water leak will be all done. And I can sit back and just go, yep, let's just enjoy this house now, instead of having to fix something or breathe new life into something that was just disastrous. Now we can actually focus on actually enjoying the home that we live in, or enjoying the property that we own, or maybe you've been looking to buy a house and you were doing a lot of research. Jupiter retrograde can go very in depth and looking for a community of substance that you want to belong in, some utopian village or something like that. My dream. And you've been looking at, how can I make that happen? Well, how can I do this? And Jupiter goes direct, and it's like, okay, we've done it. Now we know where we want to be. Let's make all the externals work. We've done the research. We've looked for the truth. We've found the answer, the substance, the place we want to be. Now let's make the externals happen. So if we happen to be Scorpio rising, well, this is actually putting the energy of Jupiter turning direct into the 3rd house. Yes, making sure that stays there. So here is Jupiter in the 3rd house, Capricorn, in whole sign astrology, and this is where the energy focus is going to be on the 12th. Up until, Jupiter went retrograde on the 14th of May, and so since that time you've been in Jupiter retrograde zone with your 3rd house things. Jupiter retrograde has a lot of alchemical overtones, turning lead into gold. And so there might have been a situation with a sibling that was really sucky, that wasn't working, that was frustrating and depressing. And you, in some, through some maybe willpower of your own, some sort of endurance, Saturn's there too, you managed to transform a relationship with a sibling that was on death's door and make it something alive and fresh and beautiful again and abundant. Jupiter can certainly bring that about during retrograde season in the house of siblings. You might have also alchemized some sort of communication. Maybe somebody wasn't understanding you and you were trying to explain to them. You've been trying to explain to them for years that, this small business would be a great opportunity, or that their talents and skills lay in this realm and they would be fantastic as a teacher, or they're really good at a graphic design or something. And you've been trying to communicate some idea, some opinion, something to somebody for years, and it's just never got through. Well, under Jupiter retrograde, that communication might have been alchemized, and they're like bulb, I get it, ta-da! Everything makes sense to someone you've been trying to communicate to. If you're a teacher, Jupiter retrograde can actually really help you if you are trying to communicate difficult concepts to your students under Jupiter retrograde. That, if you're a maths teacher, for example, and you're trying to explain some sort of high level maths, it doesn't have to be too high for it to be complex to me, but you've been trying to explain some high-level complex maths equations, and everyone's just going, what the? Jupiter goes retrograde, and you're a teacher, you're explaining it, and everyone's like, yeah, right on, get it, no worries. And so this kind of energy, what we might see, if you're communicating something, some knowledge, some talent, some skills, some wisdom to others, there might have been the opportunity for it to really gel during Jupiter retrograde. Your connection with networks in general of a social nature might have been alchemized as well, transformed, changed. So you might have had maybe a work network that, you were able to sort of, it was fractious, it was difficult, people were butting heads, and suddenly it's revived, it's come back to life, and you're going to work together now, and it's going to be great. This group work is actually functioning very well. Jupiter retrograde can do that for you. Maybe you have been looking at small business, because this is the house of small business. It's writing, teaching, communicating, and it's the skills of our hands being utilized for some entrepreneurial endeavor that we make money from. And here, Jupiter going retrograde might have caused you to alchemize a small business. Maybe you had a small business that was suffering, not going anywhere, feeling like it was about to go under, and you've somehow transformed it and breathed new life into it. And we've certainly seen that happen all over the place as people have thought of new ways to make their businesses fly in this new era of lockdown and COVID stuff. I was talking with one of my girlfriends the other day. I'm not sure if she's Scorpio rising, but she was telling me that because of COVID, she's resorted to she's a community planner. She has now started to do her community consultations via a postcard system and email, and not emailing, but posting old-fashioned postcards out to people with ticker boxes, and the ability to send the postcards back to her to collect community information that she needs for her work as a community consultant. Perfect. Jupiter retrograding, communications, networking, and doing small group work in some sort of a different way. You've alchemized a situation. Her work, as an example and an illustration, has been very much about community networking and running small groups. Disaster with COVID. You can't get people together can't get more than 5 people together in a space, certainly when we're in lockdown. But here she's come up with an alchemizing idea for how to make that work, how to do it. And it's going great guns to the point where she thinks she might do it permanently from now on, instead of just when lockdown is happening in Victoria. So there's another illustration. Alchemizing a small business, your own industry, your own practices. This is not so much the house of work, but it is the house of small business, and she runs her own small consultancy business. And that's where you can provide alchemy by turning a leaded situation into a golden situation. So for Scorpio rising people, this may have been what you've experienced. But now that Jupiter is going direct, it means that you're going to be able to focus on the externals instead of looking for deep truths and answers of substance. And, now it's like, well, let's just get on with the job. Now that I've figured out how to use my postcards, let's just make this a thing and let's just do it, Instead of looking for the solutions and problem solving, Jupiter retrograde can give us wonderful answers during that problem solving, using our logical brain, very third house. Now, okay, let's just put it into action. Let's just use this from now on. Let's just make it part of our everyday work and small business routine. So you might also, with Jupiter direct, find that sibling relationships go a lot better now. And you've resolved things, you've alchemized things, thumbs up, everything's good now. You can just sit back and enjoy the dynamic of sibling relationships, or small group networks, or communications and teaching. You've taught those maths students all that highfalutin maths, complex knowledge, and now they've got it right. You can just sit back and enjoy the rest of the year teaching what you need to teach them, because it's gelled and it's made sense to them. You can enjoy the benefits and focus now on the externals. So now if you are Sagittarius rising, while you're having the retrograde motion of Jupiter come to an end in your second house. It's been retrograding there since the 14th of May. And so this is a time when you might have been experiencing the energy of Jupiter retrograde in application to your second house of material resources, the things you need to support your body and its journey through life, as well as your sense of self-worth and self-value. Well, because Jupiter, when retrograde, is very internalized, and internal things become more important, you may have found, if you are Sagittarius rising, that the idea of money, of creating material prosperity, mightn't have been at the forefront during Jupiter retrograde. You might have been more concerned with other things, your sense of values, and maybe looking at ways that money has meaning, or prosperity has meaning. Like, the focus might have been for you on, well, how can what I earn be used to support a charity or help people in need? There's a much more compassionate overtone to why and how and where you're creating material resources for yourself. The externals are not as important. So you might have found that during this time, if you're Sagittarius rising, having the latest couch in your living room, or, the latest trendy clothes in the cupboard, or having, a well-stocked pantry is just, I'm a bit over that. I don't need that anymore. That doesn't mean so much to me. Now I'd much rather spend my money on maybe having a subscription to Gaia TV or something, and watching some documentaries, or buying some really valuable book that you've always wanted from the Theosophical Society will have more importance to you than having that latest pair of sneakers. So the values change, the priorities change when Jupiter is retrograding, and you want material goods, if you like, of more substance. Where you spend your money now becomes something that must have some deeper meaning to it. That's more for a philosophical purpose and a soul expansion purpose when Jupiter is retrograding in the second house. Jupiter retrograding in the second house, which is a house of our personal values as well, does also mean that we're going to be less interested in playing a role to gain approval in life. We're going to be more real, because Jupiter retrograde wants substance and truth. And so if we are pretending in any way to be what we think other people want in order to get a sense of approval, well, that just goes out the door during Jupiter retrograde. We'd start to say, well, screw you, I'm going to just be me. And if you don't like it, tough luck, which is actually quite healthy. What Jupiter retrograde does is he alchemizes. And so you will alchemize your sense of self-worth, your sense of self-value, and be less inclined to want to play a role, which could be very harmful to your sense of well-being, obviously. That's going to be less important to you now, and very healing to do so. Also, if you're Sagittarius rising, you're going to alchemize financial situations as well. In fact, even though you're not as focused on externals and having the latest and greatest, because you're more focused on substance now, you can actually still alchemize your financial situation. And you might find that even though you have not been maybe putting as much emphasis on the creation of money during this time, that you're more interested in substance, that money has still grown for you in some manner, because Jupiter alchemizes our material resources and turns lead, what hasn't been working for us, into gold, maybe quite literally for you with this placement. So in that sense, a very beneficial period, Jupiter retrograding in the second house. But I have to also say, Jupiter is now turning direct, as I said in the intro. And this means that you perhaps won't be so interested any longer in having a subscription to Gaia TV. You might cancel your subscription, or you might decide, I probably don't need to buy any more spiritual books. I've got a pile, this big beside my bed. That'll do me for now. And you change the focus of the material expenditure. It's not going to be so much now about substance and depth and meaning. It's going to be more, well, you know what? We haven't had a decent, meal at home in ages. I probably need to go and do a decent shop and fill up the pantry. You are going to be focused more on the externals now as Jupiter goes direct. And of course, there is a time and a place and a season for that. And now's the season when Jupiter goes direct. As for your sense of self-worth and self-value, do be very, very careful about going back to playing the role in order to gain approval. Try and avoid that. Try and, pull yourself up and say, hang on a minute. I'm not going to pretend that I've got it all together, like I'm this, great goddess of, life is so perfect for me. Now I'm going to actually be real. I'm going to be true. No more role playing in my life. So keep that at the forefront of your mind, because you may find with Jupiter going direct that you tend to go back to playing the role. Now, for Capricorn, get my words out, Capricorn rising people, well, Jupiter has been retrograding in your first house, and boy, have you guys had a year and a half or two with Saturn that's been there for 2.5 to 3 years. But this energy in the first house, Jupiter going retrograde since the 14th of May, has meant that there's been a very strong focus in your life on this retrograde motion personally. And what's it brought you? You've probably discovered a spiritual side to yourself that you never even knew existed. You've probably gone very deep with your spirituality, with anything philosophical, and with anything that is expansive. Jupiter is always expansive, even in retrograde motion, but expansive on an inner level. The inner plane of who you are and the inner plane of your identity has probably been expanded since the 14th of May. For some Capricorn rising people, there might have been a feeling of being a bit disconnected with the life you're actually living, because when Jupiter is retrograding, you want substance, you want meaning in your life. You don't just want that run-of-the-mill job just to pay the bills. You want it to have purpose. You want to leave a contribution to the world or transform the world with compassion or kindness in some way. There's a real drive for meaning when you have this retrograding in the first house. And certainly you might have sort of gone through a time perhaps when you might have been depressed during this retrograde season, because maybe life didn't match up in reality with the aspirations that you found that you had. My job feels empty. My job doesn't feel like it's fulfilling me. My family, I just feel like I'm a slave to them and not appreciated, and I wanted more substance in the family life than what I've got, or whatever. There may have been a difficulty in integrating the reality of the life you're living with what you deep down wanted during this particular retrograde season. But the good news, and this is not always the case. I mean, I have Jupiter retrograding there in my first house natally, and I certainly don't get depressed very much, although I do often think about how things don't turn out as I envision that they should, with everything in life. And maybe that's Pisces idealism. But that aside, Jupiter going direct here can mean, okay, I've been focused on what gives me meaning, what gives me substance in my daily life and the way I'm living and who I am and my identity. And then Jupiter goes direct and it's like, you know what? It doesn't matter so much anymore. I can focus on the externals. I've just got to pay the bills. I've just got to live my life and, make it as beautiful and prosperous as I can, given the circumstances, bit of give and take. So Jupiter going direct can change the perspective that you've had on life and meaning and substance and purpose. But I want to point out that Jupiter, when he is in retrograde motion, can be very alchemical. So you might have transformed something internally in your life. Remember, as within, so without, the old Hermetic principle. You might have transformed something internally in your life during Jupiter retrograde season, developed a new belief system or discovered some sort of new philosophy that you've aligned to, maybe, even discovered astrology and really bought into that in great depth and gone deep with it and integrated it as part of your energy. I'm a very astrologically based person, whatever. And that then results in external world changes. So the exploration of meaning and substance that's occurred during Jupiter retrograde may very well, if you're Capricorn rising people, have transformed your life. And you might have got to a point where you said, this job, don't need it anymore. Not fulfilling me, not what I wanted. I need more. And you have actually turned something that was draining your energy, draining your life force. First house is life force energy, draining your life force energy, and you have said enough. Jupiter retrograde can bring you to that point, and you're like, okay, now I want meaning and substance in everything that I'm doing. So there can have been an alchemization of what wasn't working based on an inner change within you. And the universe often, I believe the universe has our back. When we change inwardly, then we notice a change externally. And if that's what's happened to you, you've changed inwardly, don't be surprised at how quickly the universe acts to respond to that energetic shift within you. You may just find, especially when Jupiter goes direct, that you get the job that you've wanted, that has meaning, that has substance, that has purpose. You find that community environment that means something to you, because you don't want superficiality in your friendships and your community relationships anymore. You want substance and purpose with a group of like-minded people. Or you might find that you want to sort of be living with more spirituality, and the universe brings you an external way of creating that when Jupiter goes direct and shifts the focus from the internal to the external. The alchemy that's occurred within now has a chance, when Jupiter goes direct on the 12th, to be manifested in the external reality. A very exciting time. Aquarius rising people. This energy is falling in your 12th house. This is where Jupiter has been retrograding in your chart since the 14th of May. And so we have had a chance, if we're Aquarius rising people, to be focused on transforming, alchemizing our 12th house since the 14th of May. Jupiter's about to go direct on the 12th of September. While Jupiter is retrograding in the 12th house, you might have suddenly developed a desire to express more compassionately in the world, to support and love and help people with more substance. It's a very compassionate energy, the 12th house, and Jupiter is a very compassionate planet. And so there might have been a very strong desire to contribute, to help, to be loving and to give unconditionally in some way in the world. There's also an increased capacity with Jupiter retrograding in the 12th house that you might have had a desire to sort of sacrifice your own good for the good of other people. Now, in some senses, this can look like martyrdom, but there is a way to do it that's healthy, where you don't lose and other people win. Really, we want sort of win-win situations. But Jupiter retrograding here makes you more willing to sort of give up something that might have been meaningful to you so that someone else can have the benefit. That might mean, going without your daily coffee that you buy from a cafe, and instead giving that, $30 a week or whatever to some charity organization instead. It could be as simple as that. With Jupiter retrograding here, your interest in spirituality or rituals or ceremony, because Jupiter rules ceremony and rituals, might have increased, and you might have found yourself in a place where you're wanting some substance and some depth to your spiritual experiences. It's not just yoga for the sake of, this is good for my body. Suddenly it's yoga that I want to connect with the divine through my yogic practice. That is the shift that can occur when Jupiter goes retrograde. You want more depth to things. Your creative expression might have taken on a more meaningful tone. Instead of just, drawing a few cartoons or whatever, suddenly these cartoons were making a statement that's coming from spiritual divinity instead when Jupiter is retrograding here. But of course, Jupiter alchemizes wherever it goes, and so you might have alchemized your creative expression. Maybe you were a writer who had writer's block at the beginning of May, and then by the time Jupiter is about to turn direct on the 12th of September coming up, suddenly you've got a whole novel behind you, or a film script, or some sort of photographic exhibition or something that you've prepared. Under this energy, the transformation can be very powerful, where we take something that was blocked or stuck or needed alchemizing, and it transforms into some sort of blossoming. You might alchemize your spiritual life in some way might have alchemized your spiritual life during this particular retrograding transit, and found that, you where you didn't understand some Buddhist principles or something like that in the beginning, by the end of the retrograde season, it all makes sense. You're on that cloud nine with your meditative practice or your understanding of Buddhist concepts that had been too beyond you prior, so you can really go deep with spirituality during Jupiter retrograde, because the focus is internal. The focus is on anything meaningful, anything spiritual, anything deep. Now Jupiter's turning direct. Perhaps those things won't be so important to you now. You've alchemized them, you've made them your own, you've transformed them, but maybe there's no need for any further depth or introspection in that sense now, because you've done it, you've alchemized it, and now you can just live with it in the external realm. Your knowledge of some spiritual side of things, or your creative expression has been transformed, and you're running with it now. Instead of having writer's block, you're actually on a roll, and you start to focus externally on producing more film scripts, or producing your next photography exhibition, or whatever it happens to be. You are actually now more focused on the externals. I'm not saying that your interest in compassionate work will wane, but it may have a lesser priority now when Jupiter goes direct. You might be more focused on other things. Yes, you might still go without that coffee to donate money to charity or something, but it may not be such a big deal any longer as it might have been. You can sort of pull that off without even thinking about it, and your priorities go elsewhere. So Jupiter turning direct just makes our focus now more external, rather than sort of looking for the depth, looking for the meaning, looking for the substance. But just know you will have alchemized something in your life very strongly during this time. And I will point out too, for Aquarius rising people, this is your 12th house, the house of past lives, and it's likely, you may not realize this is the case, but with Jupiter turning direct, you may be at the fruition point of having alchemized, transformed, changed, and breathed new life into some old karmic loop that was playing out. It's been alchemized, it's come to an end, you've cut it off, it's no longer an issue, no longer a problem, it's healed, it's resolved, away you go, focus on the external experience of life now. You may not realize that's what's happened, but look back at what's been going on since May. What big shifts have taken place? What changes? They mightn't have been easy to bear, they mightn't have been a walk in the park, but there's bound to be some significant changes that have occurred during Jupiter retrograde in your 12th house. And just know, even if they don't make sense to you, just know it could very well be that they were a karmic ripening that needed to occur so that you can live more fully and abundantly in the present moment, the present life that you're currently in. Moving along, we're looking now at Pisces. Pisces rising people, well, this is falling in your 11th house, and so this is where Jupiter has been retrograding since May the 14th. And because of this, there's been a big emphasis on alchemizing 11th house things. When Jupiter's retrograding, we're very internally focused, and we want meaning, we want substance. So our group involvements that we participate in at this time, what we've participated in before, we joined the CWA and we're making sponges or doing knitting or whatever, or we're part of some astronomical group, and it's been very surface and not, how's the weather kind of thing. And when Jupiter goes retrograde, our group involvements, our friendship connections and circles, suddenly they might not satisfy. We might have wanted more meaning, more depth, more substance out of our connections, group-wise, friendship-wise, and community-wise as well. We might have wanted a lot more depth. And so we would have been seeking more depth, more substance in those realms in life. And certainly because Jupiter alchemizes, we might have transformed our friendship circles. What was sucky to begin with in May may now look like the most beautiful friendship group we've ever known. And we receive a blossoming because we've alchemized through Jupiter retrograde period our friendship circles, our social interactions, our community involvements, our humanitarian causes and activism, which are all 11th house things. The other thing that the 11th house rules is our rewards and our gains. Now, during Jupiter retrograde, we may have found that our drive for achieving some sort of Nobel Peace Prize or getting some sort of recognition, getting some sort of financial remuneration, our drive for those things may not have been so important because Jupiter is not, when he's retrograde, doesn't really care about those external things quite so much. Or we might have found that those things were harder to attain, harder to achieve because of Jupiter retrograding in this particular realm of the chart. That could have been frustrating for some people who are very driven for external things. But, generally Jupiter retrograding here might say that you want more meaning out of this stuff. It's, who cares if I get a Nobel Peace Prize? Have I changed people's lives? Have I helped humanity live a better life? Have I healed people? Have I, whatever is substance and meaning for you. You're not going to care about the reward. You want the meaning, the compassion, the purpose. So that's what we can be experiencing during Jupiter retrograde in the 11th house. And we can also be alchemizing those things as well. As we alchemize our friendships and our networks and our social connections, we can alchemize our rewards and our gains. Where in life are we not getting the reward that we actually deserve? Maybe we were busting our gut. Working hard, 16-hour days, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, and not seeing the reward for it. There's a lead situation. Our rewards and gains are not matching up with what we deserve. And Jupiter retrograding here might have, over the course of time since May, have transformed that situation and said, you know what? Don't work 16-hour days, 7 days a week and not get what you deserve. Enough with that. Let's alchemize that. Let's bring you the gold. Let's work, let's get the rewards that you deserve. Working appropriate hours, having time for family, having time for community and friends and what have you. Let's alchemize the way rewards, gains, and receipt of money for the work that you do is functioning in your life. Maybe Jupiter might have brought new methods of earning money to you during this time. Maybe Jupiter might have revealed new social structures that you could have been involved in that can bring blessing. So the alchemy that is occurring for Pisces rising people in how they achieve their goals and dreams and how they receive their rewards. Now, in terms of goals and dreams, I'll give you an illustration. Like I have started working during Jupiter retrograde season with some tremendously gifted people who have become my network, 11th house, of friends, 11th house. And we work together on my website. And this has been my dream for years, to have a wellness hub where people could come and find all sorts of resources for supporting their life journey and their understanding of spirit and their understanding of self. And so this is manifested for me during Jupiter retrograde, and it's gone from a position of I was working 16-hour days, 7 days a week, to now I'm working in collaboration and I'm sharing and spreading this, the blessing of my channel with as many people as I find who are quality practitioners. And so this is an illustration of how this has worked in my life to transform a goal and dream from a leaded situation, a difficult, hard working situation, into something that now brings benefit and brings my dreams to fruition, which has always been to have a wellness hub, as well as allowing the dreams of my friends and not just friendships but social networks to manifest as well in their desire to bring healing to the world. That's how that's played out in my life. It may have some similar scenario for you that has worked in some goal, dream, aspiration that you have had. And of course, Jupiter turning direct means, okay, now we no longer need to alchemize the situation because we've done it. Now we can actually focus on external enjoyment of what we've built. So instead of looking for truth and substance and meaning and purpose in what we're doing, something that brings value to me through our rewards and our gains and our friendships and our networks, now it's done. And now we start working with the externalized reality. We start making it happen. We start running with what we have developed during retrograde season. So very interesting season, Jupiter retrograde, and very powerful. Aries rising people, thank you for sitting through until now. Aries rising people, well, you guys are seeing the energy of Jupiter turning direct in your 10th house. So this is where you will have been alchemizing something in your life since the 14th of May when Jupiter went retrograde. Jupiter retrograde internalizes the focus in life and causes us to look for meaning, for substance. So it's in the realm of career and relationships with authority figures that you might have been looking for more meaning and substance, and you might have said, well, enough's enough. I can't tolerate this lack of substance in my career any longer. I want something of value. I want something of purpose. I want to do something that's worthwhile and has meaning. For Aries rising people, that may have been a big issue since the 14th of May. You might have been even desirous with Jupiter retrograding of doing some more study, looking for some sort of a upgrading of skills so that you can get a promotion or something, because Jupiter is looking for meaning, looking for substance when he's retrograde. And maybe if you want meaning and substance in your work, you need to get more skills, and Jupiter is going and getting a college and university degree. That may have been the case. Now, it's in this realm, Aries rising people, that you will alchemize your life as well. So maybe when this retrograde period began, you were in a position where there was no substance to what you were doing career-wise, and it felt unfulfilling, and you felt a bit lost and like, this is not working for me. And then lo and behold, along goes Jupiter retrograde season. And by the end of Jupiter retrograde season, you've found a job or a career or doing some sort of worldly achievement that brings you a sense of fulfillment, or you found a night course that you can study to get a degree and create the career of substance that you've always wanted, that you've been dreaming of. Because this is the house of our worldly achievements. And if you want to achieve something with meaning and substance, then this is the time for looking at ways to bring that about during Jupiter retrograde. So you may have alchemized your situation from one way of being into another with regard to the things you desire to achieve and accomplish in the world. Now, of course, when Jupiter goes direct, this is meaning that you are going to be more externalized now. Okay, so you've done the work, you've alchemized your situation, regarding career and worldly achievement, and your social status even kind of gone through a big shift as well. It might have sucked at the beginning, and now your social status is like right up there, top of the tree. That can have happened as well during Jupiter retrograde. But now when Jupiter goes direct, well, you've done the work. You've alchemized the situation, all being well and good. And if you've worked hard, you've alchemized the situation, and it's like, okay, now I don't need to worry anymore. I've started my course. I'm loving my course. That's really serving me well. And because I'm doing this course, my boss has given me a promotion. I'm doing something that's much more my style, and I have a position that feels more suited to the meaning and purpose I was looking for. And now away I go. I don't need to worry about looking for meaning and substance and transforming my life and my career to have more depth. Now it's just working for me. Now I can just keep going because I've done the transformation. Now I just focus on the external living it. And that's what can happen when Jupiter goes direct. You might just find you're not in a place of needing to change, but you're in a place of just enjoying the results of the Jupiter retrograde season, focusing externally. And finally, Taurus, you have waited, and I thank you so much for that. Bless you guys. Jupiter is retrograding, or has been retrograding since the 14th of May, here in your 9th house. Make sure you're going to stay there. Here in your 9th house. And that means that the focus has been very internalized in 9th house things. And it's in 9th house things that you have alchemized your life in some way. This is not that easy to carry. I've got to say, the Jupiter retrograding in the 9th house position can make you a bit dubious about certain belief systems, certain faith systems. You might be very much, something you believed in prior to this retrograde period, you might have been scratching your head about. Well, is this really got the substance and depth that I wanted? Does this have the meaning? Is this religion really what I'm all about? And you might start to question things very deeply, but that's a healthy process to do that. Question your gurus, question your teachers, question your father figure type people in your life, and make sure that they're the real deal under this influence. You can actually very much alchemize your relationship with your gurus and teachers, and alchemize your spiritual beliefs under this, your religious beliefs. You can also alchemize perhaps your understanding of other cultures and your knowledge of other cultures and your relationship to other cultures too. So let's give an example. Maybe you started out this retrograde period in May with, you just loved some guru and you thought that they were the bee's knees, and you had all their books and you just thought they were wonderful. And then as this retrograde period wore on, you started to notice kinks in their armor. No longer is this person on a pedestal. There's cracks. There's they lack integrity in some area, or they've behaved in a way that you don't think really aligns, and you start to look deeper. Well, what's the truth here? What's really going on here? What do I really believe about what this person has said? Am I in alignment with that? And you actually go through a process through deep looking for truth of alchemizing your beliefs. And by the end of this particular period, suddenly you have your own belief system. You're standing more on your own 2 feet now, instead of just believing what some spiritual leader has told you. You're standing more firmly in your own truth now, with Jupiter having alchemized belief and faith and connection to gurus. And that can be a very healthy thing, even though it can be a bit of a disconcerting process, because you're losing your foundation of belief in a sense, and reworking it, reestablishing it, rebuilding it. But by the end of this period, when Jupiter goes direct on the 12th of December, you can look back and say, well, look at how I've changed and transformed in who I am, what I believe, what's important to me. And look at who I am now. I'm just going to live this. This is my truth. This is the divine wisdom. What I've learnt, what I've embraced during this retrograde season. This is what I'm all about, and I'm going to live this. It's kind of, you're coming to the end of the introspective period of changing and alchemizing your beliefs and who you are, and your knowledge of how the world works, and your philosophizing. The change has occurred during the retrograde season, and now the living it begins when Jupiter goes direct on the 12th. So I'm trying to think of an illustration. You might have always believed that the government had your best interest in mind, and that there's nothing that the government could do that was wrong, because they always made the right choices. This is happening in the sign of Capricorn, governments, obviously. But by the end of the retrograde period, you've kind of done a lot of deep introspection and research, and you've come to the realization that, well, hang on a minute, government's actually quite corrupt. And I'm not just saying this, guys. Please don't judge me as being, a conspiracy theorist. I've worked in local government. I've seen firsthand. I don't need to read articles online to know how utterly corrupt government organizations are, because I have experienced it firsthand over the course of many years of dealing internally in government. Okay, so before you jump on the conspiracy theorist, she sucks bandwagon, know that that's where my information is coming from. So using this as an illustration, you may have realized the truth about some situation that you never believed before. And you're like, right, well, I'm not going to align with that way of thinking any longer that says, the government, when they're fantastic, they can do no wrong, they're superhuman. You come to a realization, they are real people who can be greedy. They can be all these other things that human nature does display from time to time, and quite a lot. And you come to a realization, and it then causes a change in your beliefs, a shift in your belief that then changes your external behavior, your external experience now. And so you might decide, I'm going to question things now. I'm going to be a bit skeptical about things, and I'm going to look for truth before I just believe what I'm told. And that can be a healthy shift and a healthy change. So that's an example of probably a bit of a controversial example of how a shift in beliefs can actually occur under this influence. But just know your changes in understanding and knowledge and belief will occur for you now to live in some new belief system that you might have alchemized from back at the beginning of May. So that is what I'm seeing with the whip around the astrology chart. Thank you for joining me for this rather long video and this explanation of all signs. I hope it proves helpful for your journey, because that's the purpose. That's what we want, to help people through the month of September and October and be birthed into that new baby, holding that new baby in our arms. So let's close with a prayer, and couldn't we all use the energy of the divine to support us right now? Energy of love in the universe. We just call on all divine beings of light to surround and support the earth right now, to help uphold people who have a good intent for humanity, for the world, to uplift their actions and their words. And we ask that the beings of light that surround the earth during the final months of 2020 help us be born into a whole new dynamic, a whole new era of life on earth that is more blessed, more abundant, more equal, more aligned for everyone to benefit. That's our desire. And so we ask that the beings of light that come to support us will help drive out corruption, pedophilia, violence, greed, and the destruction that is so prevalent on our planet now, so that purity and righteousness and goodness and love are what remains. And we ask it for the blessing of all humanity that exists now and all humanity that is to come. And so it is. Well, thanks for joining me. I'll have another Astro Weather Report for you next week. Till then, God bless.